Welcome back, everybody. We are here for the finals of the 2018 Roanoke, Virginia Regional Championships. I am Michael Slutsky, and I am here with Chip Ritchie. Chip, it has been a long weekend filled with amazing games, and here we are with just one series left.
A long weekend, so it's fitting that we would have a long finals here as we have a Waylord deck making it all the way to the finals. Butch Smith, who we just saw on the last round, is actually going to be playing against Xander Pero, who is going to be playing the same deck we saw from Isaac last round, being that Buzzwole GX Lycanroc deck. And Butch won in a pretty convincing fashion in that last game. From that second game, Butch was able to just turn one get Plumeria, turn one get Beach, and just had everything he needed for the whole game, kept energy off of Isaac's side. I think that's going to be Butch's strategy once again. If he can find that Plumeria early, that was so key to his victory in this last game.
Yeah, and the finals here, there's a great story here in the finals. On one side, we've got Xander. He's already won a regionals this season. He's hoping to win his second and match the three other players who've already done that incredible feat this season. But in order to do it, he'll have to defeat Butch's Whales. Butch, of course, is looking to give Waylord its first ever major tournament win, so should be very exciting, all things considered, with Waylord.
Yeah, not only Waylord's first ever win, this would be Butch's first win as well. Butch's first time in top 8, I believe actually even his first day 2 at a regional championship, so, congratulations to Butch here, making it all the way to the finals, and there's definitely a lot on the line here in this finals match. $5,000 going to the winner of this game. The loser still walks away with $2,500, but, $5,000 is a lot more than $2,500, and you also get to walk away with the title of regional champion.
And we are getting started here. Butch starts, surprisingly, a Waylord EX, while Xander starts with a Sudowoodo. We have the names inverted right now, but we'll get that switched here shortly.
Yeah, we'll get those names switched over, no problem, simple enough, but Butch is on the right, Xander on the left. And yeah, you mentioned earlier the three other people who've won regionals this season. Those three people are, we've seen people win multiple regionals in the past, but, very rarely do we see someone win 2 regionals in a season. And that's happened 3 times this year. Michael Pramawat won the very first regionals of the season in Fort Wayne, also winning Memphis later on in the year. We saw Igor Costa winning Hartford regionals as well as the Costa Mesa regional championships. And then we have also seen Ryan Sablehouse winning, I believe Charlotte regionals was his second one. His first one this season was Daytona. So interesting enough to note as well, each of those players that has won 2 regionals has won one of the regionals being in the expanded format and one of them being in the standard format. Xander also making to look that happen, since Xander's regionals win earlier this year was with Espeon Garbodor in the standard format, now looking to get a win with Buzzwole in expanded.
Yeah, so we saw on Xander's turn, he drew and he played an N and he passed. Kind of mimicking Butch's strategy. So Butch here will be playing Nest Ball. He's going to look through his deck, see what's in there. Obviously, he's most likely just going to grab another Waylord. Butch, if his turn is going to be perfect here, he just wants to find that Tropical Beach and use Beach to end his turn.
Yeah, Tropical Beach is super important in this Waylord deck, letting the player draw until they have, 7 cards in their hands. Their turn does end, but you don't really mind that when you're Waylord, since you're going to be normally ending your turn anyway. And we might just see turn 1 the full suite of whales, but no, looks like Butch is opting to not bench that 4th Waylord.
Yeah, this lone Sudowoodo is staring down maybe one of the most impenetrable walls in Pokemon TCG history. Butch does have that Tropical Beach in his hand, and he will beach for, it looks like, 4 cards. Very good turn for Butch.
Yeah, and Xander Perot here on his side does get a Floatstone. Could pop off here this turn if he had something like Buzzwole GX, double Max Elixir, and a Strong Energy. Could get an Absorption GX KO, but no, looks like he's just going to Tropical Beach. I think Xander is one of the smartest players in the game right now. Makes very, very calculated decisions every single time he does something. So I think he's going to hold off on using any of the cards in his hand until until he's ready to, pop off with a potential big turn like multiple Max Elixirs with a Strong Energy attachment.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's interesting, obviously, is, as we saw before, Buzzwole relies on actually playing the game with your opponent, which is why it uses cards like Baby Buzzwole and Beast Ring, which factor in the prize counts. None of those cards will get any of those advantages here, as Butch will not take a single prize card in any of these games.
Yeah, and Butch using that Skylar there, grabbing that Plumeria. We saw that be super, super key in his win in the last round. Just using Plumeria to discard Isaac's fighting energy on his benched Buzzwole every single turn was absolutely devastating. So that's going to be super important for Butch here. And we see Xander going to go ahead and replace that Tropical Beach, uses the Brooklet Hill, might get a Buzzwole GX out into play here.
Yeah, if anything, he'll just use this Brooklet, just see what's prized. You know, the most important thing is just seeing how many Buzzwole are there, how much he can do with each Buzzwole, and maybe, you know, seeing Lichen Rocks, Octillery if he wants to set that up. But I don't think he's going to go for any of those things.
Yeah, we'll see what he decides to grab. Looks like he has a baby Buzzwole in his hand. That's not something that's going to be any use in this matchup. Oh yeah, Xander, one of these players who does like to take notes, make note of what is prized. So, you know, we see him jotting things down as he realizes what's in his prize cards, just so he can be aware. And, you know, this is his first search, so usually you're allowed a little longer on your first search. So just going to check, make sure he knows what he has access to through this game.
Yeah, and Xander, you know, I imagine Xander's probably counting the energy in his deck. That's the most important resource this game. He runs 13 energy, 9 of them are basic, and he runs a Super Rod. So he will be able to withstand a couple of Plumeria, but, you know, he's got to be careful with every one of the energy that he does play.
Each energy attachment will be precious for Xander Pirro. We saw in the last game, even with Isaac's Super Rod, you know, Butch was still able to just get rid of every single energy card that came into play. So that's going to be his strategy here, and we'll see what kind of strategy Xander employs in this game. I would be very surprised to see Xander attach an energy here. He knows Butch has that Plumeria in his hand already, so I think Xander is going to be smart about that and, you know, not get that energy in play quite yet.
Xander benches that Buzzwole. He's taking a lot of notes here. You know, this game is probably going to go on for a very long time. Xander's anticipating. So just making sure he knows everything that's in his deck. Doesn't have to keep, you know, trying to remember everything like that. Very smart play.
So does have energies in his hand, maybe debating attaching one, but like I said, I think he'll probably hold off for now. Something else worth noting about Butch's list is he does play Team Skull Grunt, so that could be really devastating if he was able to get that off at some point.
Yeah, Butch hates the energy on the field. He hates the energy in the hand. Butch doesn't want Xander to do anything here. Xander does retreat to the Buzzwole, attaches a Muscle Band and a Strong, so he'll be able to use Jet Punch for 70 damage to the active, and then 30 damage to one of the benched whales.
You know, and this does make sense. If Xander is going to attach this energy, he's going to make sure he gets some use out of it in attack. And Butch actually top decks the Team Flare Grunt there. That is actually pretty huge. Can use that to discard the energy, but no, looks like he's actually going to opt for Skyla. Maybe this will find an Enhanced Hammer. Maybe he wants to get that Team Skull Grunt to set up for a future turn, but looks like he's eyeing up an Enhanced Hammer to use immediately.
Yeah, you know, one way that these Whalelord decks, one way to beat the Whalelord decks is to just apply pressure constantly, force them to keep finding cards to keep up, and Butch is being able to Skyla for an Enhanced Hammer to slow Xander down is exactly what Butch wants to do.
We just see the pass, no replacement stadium quite yet. I wonder if maybe Butch could have gone Team Flare Grunt to use the Skyla on the next turn for a Tropical Beach, but opting here to just go ahead and pass it over to Xander. And Xander's going to use Brooklet Hill here. Looks like he's eyeing up that DNC Prism Star, wants to keep as much damage in play as possible.
Yeah, and if I'm Xander, you know, I understand that Butch runs Lusamine, so he will be able to, you know, kind of infinitely reuse these supporters, but that's a long ways away from now, and if he can spread the damage out, you know, get plenty of damage in play, I think he might have a shot at, you know, eventually grinding Butch down.
And Butch does play Rough Seas, which is definitely worth noting. That is a card that's going to be important here, letting him heal off damage on his benched Whalelords. You know, he's got the 4 copies of AZ, he's got 3 copies of Acerola, 4 Max Potions, so many ways to heal this massive Whalelord. I'm sure Butch, you know, it seems like a little bit of pressure is being applied, but Butch is at a point where he's not going to be too worried quite yet.
Now we see Xander's going to attach one of these fighting energies, it looks like. Looks like he's eyeing another strong energy to put 90 damage, to do 90 damage this turn, thanks to the DNC Star. But we'll see where he puts it. Maybe he spreads it to the other whale, starts putting damage on both of them.
I think he'll keep it on the same Whalelord. He doesn't want Butch to find a Rough Seas and just heal all of that damage off just all at once. So, wow, Max Potion there, pretty good for Butch to have. Gets rid of that damage on the whale, which would have gone down on the following turn. Team Flare Grunt to go with it, discards that strong energy. And, you know, this could be good for Xander. He's making Butch use things like Team Flare Grunt to discard special energies, whereas later on in the game, you know, Butch might have Enhanced Hammers in his hand, but he's not able to use them to discard Xander's basic fightings.
Yeah, definitely. We saw Butch top deck that Max Potion, I think. In the Whaler deck, one of its strengths is that it runs so many copies of either healing or disruption cards that, really it can just top deck a card that it needs in any specific situation, which is what we saw there. Xander, of course, does not like to see that. He's taking some more notes here, checking, just making sure he knows every single card that's important to him in the deck.
Yes, we see Xander shuffling after that Brooklet Hill. I think it's important we also just mention real fast kind of how the time rules work if any of these games do go to time without completing. We talked about this in our top 4 match, but worth mentioning here once again in the finals for anyone who may not have been viewing that match. If we were to go to time in game number 1, if game number 1 was to never finish, the person who was ahead on prize cards at the time that plus 3 turns was over would win the match. And in that instance, that would definitely be Xander Perot, right? He is the only one that can take prize cards. Butch has no way to attack in his deck besides using Lighting GX or the Arangaru's resource management, so we wouldn't necessarily be likely to see Butch taking any prize cards, and so Xander would win in that instance if it was to go to time in game number 2. If the player who wins game number 1, they have the win for that one. If the player who didn't win game number 1 has taken at least 50% of their prize cards for that game, they will win that game, and then we would set up for a sudden death match, which is exactly the scenario we saw in the 2015 National Championship.
Yeah. Butch actually uses Xander's Brooklet Hill to find the 4th whale. I'm not sure. I don't think it's called a school of whales. I'm not sure what the unit of measurement is for whales, but whatever it is, Butch has it. And Xander, he used Jet Shoot last turn again, spreading to those same 2 Wailord. This is good. He's able to keep doing this. As long as he can just find an energy every single turn, he can keep stacking this damage, find a way maybe at some point to start piecing together some prize cards.
Yeah, so we'll see what Xander gets here. Playing a Chorus for 5 cards. Going to see what he draws off of this. Has already attached for turn. Butch is going to want to find some sort of energy disruption on the next turn to get rid of this energy. A Buzzwole with just 1 energy on it isn't too threatening, but if Butch can just keep those energies off of there, it'll be definitely good for him.
Yeah, and Butch obviously has a lot of cards in his hand, but he does not have a Tropical Beach. So, maybe Xander is counting on that fact and hoping that at some point he can grind him down.
Xander, off of that Chorus, drew 3 energy cards, a Guzma, and a B-String. Not a super great hand, but, hey, he's got the energy he's going to need to keep attacking every single turn. And it looks like Butch actually just top-decked a Tropical Beach.
Brutal. Max Potion.
Plumeria. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to discard that energy card on the Xander's side of the field and also thin his hand down so he's able to draw more cards with Tropical Beach. We see that Xurkitree GX hitting the discard pile. Butch is definitely not going to want to let that Fighting Weak Pokemon hit the field at any time in this game.
Yeah, Xander draws. I'm not sure what he drew. Maybe another Fighting Energy. Oh, no, looks like he drew a Buzzwole. Not something that's going to be particularly useful to him. But again, he has at least 2 more turns of energy. But he's going to need to start finding some more cards here than just these energy.
There's 120 damage on that benched Buzzwole. I don't think Xander really has a way to deal 130 damage to a Buzzwole, so it looks like we're just going to see him use that Tropical Beach on Butch's side and draw a couple cards. Try to set up for something else in the future. Oh, and never mind. There goes all that damage.
Another Max Potion. But I believe that is 3 or 4 Max Potion down now for Butch. So, Xander can take solace in the fact that at least Butch can only use a trainer to heal 1 more time before the supporters start coming. But, of course, the Rough Seas are hiding in the deck as well. I'm not sure if Xander knows that. We see another Plumeria coming down here. Plumeria, of course, has the utility of being able to discard basic energy on the bench. You do discard 2 cards from your hand, but Butch does not really care about that at all.
Yeah, and we just see some supporters in stadiums hitting the discard pile, which he's going to have infinite access to those cards through things like the Lucamine, which we'll see him definitely try to chain those Lucamines later on in the game. We also see him bench a Robo Substitute. That's 5 Pokemon on the bench. That could potentially open up a window for Xander to try to set up a 2-energy Dangerous Rogue with a Strong Energy and Choice Band combo, or even just a Choice Band since there's the Deancey in play to get a Dangerous Rogue knockout. What do you think about Butch's decision to put that Robo Sub down?
It's interesting. I'm not really sure why he needs it on the bench. Maybe he wants to draw more cards with Tropical Beach, but, he's kind of in control of this game. Xander is only able to attach 1 energy a turn, and he seems to have the resources to get rid of him, so I'm not really sure why I guess maybe he just valued the card draw instead. I'm not sure if he anticipates Dangerous Rogue.
Well, here's actually something interesting. Well, first off, we see Xander Ultra Balling away 2 B-Strings, which is just a totally useless card in this matchup. He'll never be able to play that. B-String only works when your opponent's at 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, and Butch is never going to take a prize card. But I guess something worth noting here, and what Butch might be trying to do is, if Xander does ever, bench a Rockruff and attach an energy to it to try to threaten a Dangerous Rogue, all Butch has to do is discard that Robo Substitute. You can just discard it at any time you want to, and that's almost a wasted energy from Xander if he was to put one on the Rockruff, since, Dangerous Rogue never will get that one-hit KO unless there were the 4 Pokemon in play.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure Xander recognizes that ability. He recognizes the fact that if he started to threaten it, Butch could also play an AZ and just pick up one of the Wailords and take Dangerous Rogue out of one-hit KO range. So Xander probably understands that, understands he can't get cute with something like Dangerous Rogue, and he'll have to do it with just this Buzzwole.
Yeah, and, we could still see him put the Rockruff in play. Bloodthirsty Eyes can definitely still have some sort of utility. We do see VS Seeker grabbing that Plumeria, discarding the Skyla and the Lusamine. Lusamine is a great supporter to have in the discard pile, because once he draws his other Lusamine, he'll just be able to have infinite access to his supporters, it seems. And Plumeria here, discarding that binged basic energy.
Yeah, he's going to draw 2 more cards for Beach. Xander, he's got 1 energy left in his hand, but, he's going to keep trying to force Butch to keep using Plumeria, keep VS Seekering for it, or eventually Lusamine for it, keep discarding cards to keep knocking off these basic energy. Xander hopes that maybe at some point he can get enough energy down to use an Absorption for a knockout. He replaces the Tropical Beach with Brooklet, I think just to stop Butch from drawing more cards.
Yeah, trying to take away that card draw option from Butch for sure. That's really what Wailord relies on, right? Using Tropical Beach every single turn so that he's able to draw into those disruption cards and healing cards at the same time. And we've kind of talked about this, when we've seen Wailord in the past. Something that's important is if Wailord is able to heal and remove an energy in the same turn. Usually if you can keep one of those things from happening, you'll be in an okay spot, like a much more manageable position at least. And, but if Butch is able to keep healing plus removing Xander's energy, he's going to be in a good spot.
It looks like Xander attaches and passes again. Butch almost certainly would like to get rid of that. He just goes for the Handiwork instead. Handiwork is a tool that disruption decks like Wailord have gotten since it saw play last. Double Tails here, but that's an aggressive way for them to start discarding cards that prevents your opponent from just sitting there and doing nothing.
There could be a potential opening for Xander here as we see this Super Rod come out. If he has a couple of Max Elixirs, or even just 1 Max Elixir, plus a Guzma in his hand and an energy to attach for turn, could maybe get an Absorption GX KO. Wouldn't even need the Guzma, actually. He just has the Floatstone on his Sudowoodo in the active spot.
Yeah, Xander probably recognizes its opportunity. Double Tails from that Handiwork is basically a wasted turn on Butch's side. So Xander really would like to capitalize on this if he can, but the only way to do it is with a Sycamore, a card that you hate to play in this matchup. Not only does it draw 7 cards from the deck, but it also discards any cards in your hand that you could use to put back later with N.
But Xander looks like he's seeing this opportunity here, gonna try to go after it. If he can pull this off, he'll take 2 prize cards, which will, be something he wants to do to put himself in a position to win. Does he see a Max Elixir in that hand?
I think there is one.
He did draw a few basic energies as well, so it might be kind of hard for him to hit this Max Elixir. Might not have the highest odds, and if that's the case, we might actually just see Xander pass, recognizing that, hey, it's not super likely that I'd hit this Elixir. I don't want to just waste that resource.
Checking the discard, probably checking to see how many VS Seeker are in there, how many times he can reuse Plumeria. At some point, Butch is going to have to start activating the Infinite Loop, which means that, supporters that Xander doesn't want to see will come only every other turn.
And we see it coming out right now. Butch does already have 1 Lusamine in the discard pile, so he'll Lusamine, grab 1 Lusamine, and we'll see what other supporter he gets. I gotta think it'll probably be Plumeria. Looks like he's eyeing up Team Flare Grunt, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. They do the same thing, but Flare Grunt doesn't discard. You don't have to discard cards from your hand, so maybe Butch is anticipating this coming Absorption GX and just wants a clean energy discard.
So Xander could make, actually just has the KO here. Butch didn't remove that energy on the bench. We know Xander has 1 energy card in his hand. He can get the first knockout of the game with an Absorption GX and then try to set up for a following turn where he can get a Knuckle Impact KO.
Yeah, it's like he attaches that fighting. He has the Max Elixir. Here, If he hits this Max Elixir, he'll be able to withstand this Flare Grunt, be able to attack consecutively.
Oh,
and
that's
he does
6th
hit
card!
It. This is huge for Xander.
So it's actually funny, worth noting, if Xander had played that Max Elixir last turn, he would have missed it because the 6th card was the energy card, which would have been the 7th card last turn. Since Xander waited one more turn, it increased his odds of finding an energy card, and he was able to hit it and has 4 energies on this Buzzwole GX now.
Yeah, Xander knew that the 7th card down was that fighting energy, intelligently waited a turn here to make sure that he got it. Very smart play by Xander. But yeah, this is huge. He will withstand that Team Flare Grunt, which means he can Knuckle Impact the following turn. Of course, that doesn't knock out a Wailord, but it will put a ton of pressure on Butch, something Xander has been waiting to do this whole game.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. He needs a ton of buffs in order to be able to knock out a Wailord with Knuckle Impact, and with the Muscle Band attached to this Buzzwole, it might actually be kind of hard for him to make that happen. Maybe wishing he hadn't attached that Muscle Band and waited to maybe find a Choice Band. I'm not sure that he plays a Field Blower in his list. It doesn't look like he does right now, so that Muscle Band is going to be there to stay.
Yeah, that Choice Band, that plus 10 math is very important here when you're staring down a 250 HP Behemoth. But Xander is going to retreat here. Finally is able to attack with Buzzwole for more than, a jet shoot, jet punch. So here we go. We are going to see the first GX attack of the game, and likely the only GX attack that we will see in this series.
Yeah, I don't think Butch is ever going to want to go for a Lighting GX. That's just asking for it. It's weak to fighting, very easy for a jet punch to even come in and knock it out. So.
And Xander is actually thinking. Looks like he was eyeing some dice, so...
Oh, this is interesting. Actually, using a Jet Punch here as opposed to the Absorption GX, maybe trying to save it so that he can go for a Knuckle Impact next turn. So, he knows he'll withstand the energy.
So Butch plays a Max Potion there, but Xander must realize that that's the 4th Max Potion. So now, Butch, if he wants to heal, he'll have to either find that Rough Seas, which I don't know if Xander knows he has, but play a supporter to heal. And this is very smart of Xander. He's baiting out that resource. He has a 4th energy again, so he can just repeat this play, and then Butch will be forced to start using his healing supporters instead of disrupting Xander.
Butch does have access to Puzzle of Time. He can maybe try to find those combos to try to get the Max Potion back, but it's definitely a lot to ask for to get those 2 cards as opposed to just the 1 card. And, Xander, definitely playing very smart here. Oh, Rough Seas does come out, and that is big for Butch.
Yeah, I think Xander... I think he's played 2 Brooklet Hill at least already, so I think he only has 1 out left to get rid of a Rough Seas, and of course it doesn't matter. Butch has Lucamine to make sure that Rough Seas will eventually stick for the rest of the game. But, that Wailord has no damage on it, actually. Never mind. I take that back, as Butch will pick it up. Robos up here, very important, because at most, Xander can do 30 damage with a Jet Shoot unless he pulls up one of the Wailords, which is effectively meaningless because of Rough Seas.
So we'll see what Xander decides to do here. We'll probably just see him take out this Robosup. He actually does have a Guzma in his hand. Might want to save that for a potential turn later on. Maybe could, Jet Punch this turn, put 60 on that Wailord, and maybe try to go for like an Absorption, and then try to set up for a later turn where he is able to Guzma a damaged Wailord to get a Knuckle Impact on it.
Looks like he does just opt to shoot 30 onto that damaged Wailord. Of course, that damage... almost meaningless, but he's just keeping it at 30, which I think is important here against Butch. If he can find a strong energy or a beast energy, he would be able to Knuckle Impact and knock out that Wailord. Butch with the double Puzzle of Time here, the first of these 2, and looks like he's eyeing VS Seekers.
Yeah, just wants to have access to those supporters that he's been using throughout this game. Things like Team Flare Grunt, things like Lucamine even, or, Plumeria as well, if this Buzzwole does go back to the bench. Butch has not used Rough Seas yet. He's going to want to make sure he remembers to do that. Yep, there we go, catching it right there at the end of the turn. Usually we see these Wailord players do it right at the beginning of their turn. They want to make sure they never forget to use that because Rough Seas damage getting healed is super relevant and, could have been the difference between a knockout and not a knockout for Xander.
As Xander plays Ultra Ball here, maybe he's going for a Lele to use like an N or something like that. Get rid of the horde of cards that Butch has. He knows that the cards Butch Lucamine for a couple of turns ago are still in there. The other VS Seeker is still in there. Plus, Xander doesn't know what else, so maybe disrupting that. I don't see a Lele in the deck, so I don't know what he's going to grab with this Ultra Ball. Maybe just checking again. Opts to fail it. Unfortunate. That's 2 cards down. I think Xander might not have realized that the card he wanted was prized. which I assume is Lele. So unfortunate for Xander, but
You know, maybe he just wants to take a look through his deck. Playing cards like Ultra Ball force you to look through your deck, and then you have to shuffle your deck after your opponent shuffles your deck. All of these things take time, and time is a huge factor here in this match. So Xander counting the cards in his deck, definitely something worth noting. How many cards does he have access to still? How many cards does Butch have? Going to take a look at the discard pile, see maybe how many of those Via Seekers he's down. He knows he just played those puzzle at times. How many Max Potions are gone? These are all super important resources, and you can just see on Xander's face right now. This is a lot to take in, a lot to think of, a lot to be mindful of every single turn.
yeah, definitely. Every single turn against Waylord, it seems like you have to play it optimally, because if you give them even one turn to take advantage of, it'll just kind of landslide, and there's nothing really you can do. Looks like the judges are making sure that Xander didn't play a second supporter.
And Xander going on the offensive here, using that Professor Sycamore. What do you think he's digging for here in this instance?
My guess is probably just more basic fighting. He wants to make sure he can withstand the Flare Grunt and Plumeria Assault, but that's the second Sycamore he's played. I think he's discarded at least 4 or 5 cards every turn, so he's down, actually a Sycamore's worth of cards just by playing these Sycamore. And he Absorption GXs using his red-green Fogo de Chao drink coaster as a GX marker.
I believe that's one of those chips that they give you at Brazilian restaurants and Brazilian steakhouses where, to let you know if you want to get to have more meat served to you or not at those really cool restaurants. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those, but
I
definitely
have.
neat.
They are very good. Xander also seems to have gone to them as well. Took a souvenir back with him. His Buzzwole obviously wants to feast more on these whales, but we'll see how that works.
Yeah, the big mosquito Buzzwole himself definitely trying to, take out these big whales. And we just see Butch using Via Seeker, grabbing Team Flare Grunt, discarding another energy card. And that's just been the theme of this game so far, discarding energy and using Rough Seas.
Yeah, it's interesting. The game has been going on here for 25 minutes, and only 2 prizes have been taken. And Xander is, he's not out of cards yet, but he's starting to enter kind of the low deck counts here. So he needs to be cognizant of every card he plays from now on.
Yeah, definitely something to be mindful of. He will eventually come to a point where this, all these extra energies will not be able to stick. He won't be able to threaten those knuckle impacts. We see the Rough Seas being used, healing the active and the benched Waylord. Computer Search in Butch's hand could give him access to any card he wants out of his deck. Could find a Team Flare Grunt to get rid of this energy.
Looks like he'll play Computer Search, discarding that Skull Grunt that we talked about. It looks like a Gladion.
I think that's actually a Steven there hitting the discard pile. It could be Steven or Gladion. I know he does play both cards, but it's kind of hard to tell, honestly.
I think you are right. I think that is Steven. Card that doesn't see too much play, but in a deck like Waylord, obviously very good. It gets him the supporter he wants for the next turn, and I believe he gets an energy as well, so it could find his one basic lightning energy. We saw Kirk actually played Volkner to do kind of the same thing. Volkner, of course, grabbing an item card instead. So he grabs a Robo Sub here.
Yeah, looks like that's what he got with the Computer Search. Going to use AZ, pick up this whale, send up the Robo-Sub, force Xander to attack into this. And it's kind of interesting. We've seen these Waylord decks in the past run item ways to discard energy, things like Crushing Hammer. And, Butch does not play any copies of Crushing Hammer. So his only way to discard energy from Xander's Buzzwole GX is going to be with a supporter like Team Flare Grunt or Plumeria. And he needs to draw into the pieces to get those cards in play every single turn. And it's kind of interesting here. We see the AZ sending up the Robo-Sub, and this is going to basically erase a turn of damage from Xander, right? Xander can Jet Punch and put 30 on a Waylord on the bench, but that damage just gets healed away right away with the Rough Seas in play.
And I do see 3 Brooklet Hill actually in Xander's discard pile, so that Rough Seas is going to stick for the rest of the game unless Butch decides to replace it with his own Tropical Beach.
So we see Rough Seas coming out, erasing all of that damage. There's a total of 750 HP on Butch's side of the field. A lot for Xander to try to go through to win this game.
Yeah, definitely. Buzzwole works out, but this might be over Buzzwole's max bench here. Interestingly enough, Butch had to AZ last turn, actually, which is, it's kind of significant because now Butch is starting to head into the support or healing territory, and he opts to use a VS Seeker for a Skull Grunt, but Xander has the Beast Energy. That's very important because he needs that to push damage to try and one-shot Wailord if he can, but not anymore.
That is a super important card. Butch knows he's not in that much danger right now. Knuckle Impact is not going to do enough damage to get the KO without something like a Strong Energy, without something like a Beast Energy. And, Butch is a pretty intelligent player himself. He knows that Xander is very smart. He knows Xander has been attaching these basic energies, holding off on special energies.
And Xander opts to use Knuckle Impact here, which is significant. I didn't see, does he have a Guzma in his hand to reset this damage?
He may not. This is also just really forcing Butch to have something like an AZ or an Acerola. He has discarded a few of them throughout the game. It looks like it's just going to be a Lucamine. If Butch does not have a max potion, this Wailord is going to go down this next turn if Xander can reset the damage.
The thing is, though, is that the only way Xander has to reset it is with a Guzma. So if he does Guzma, the Wailord will go to the bench, and Xander will be unable to target it again next turn. But, still... the damage, it'll stay there for a while unless he opts to use AZ, but that again forces Butch to use a healing supporter instead of a disruption supporter.
And, we did see that Butch actually just got the Team Flare Grunt back with that Lucamine, not getting an AZ, so there could be a situation here where if Xander passes, Butch heals with Rough Seas again, uses Team Flare Grunt, Xander might be able to take a Knuckle Impact KO on the Wailord unless Butch finds another healing card.
Yeah, definitely. Butch did Lucamine last turn, so he has the Flare Grunt there. He has another Lucamine as well. I imagine he's probably got another healing supporter there, but I wonder how he wants to approach this.
Yeah, and Buzzwole's been such a popular deck throughout this tournament, and Butch, I'm sure, did not get to the finals without playing multiple of them. He's definitely familiar with this matchup. I'm sure he's played against good Buzzwole players. I'm sure he's played against poor Buzzwole players, so he definitely knows what he needs to do to get the win here.
Looks like Xander...
just had to pass, yeah.
Couldn't reset. That's fine. He can attack next turn. That Wailord is at no damage. It's actually just gone.
Yep, no more damage in play.
And all of Xander's efforts were for naught.
And this is a tough spot, and it does look like Xander is kind of getting to a lower deck size, so Butch is kind of getting to the point where his strategy is going to be achieved. He hasn't even really made much use of Team Rocket's handiwork. We've seen him, play it at least once in this game. Usually when you get to later stages in the game, you're using handiwork multiple times in a row, trying to, mill your opponent's cards. But, Xander's been smart not letting Butch get to a situation like that and, forcing Butch to play things like Team Flare Grunt and Acerola.
He does use Knuckle Impact again, Butch uses Rough Seas to heal. The unfortunate thing is every time that Xander uses Knuckle Impact, it gives Butch a free turn to Lucamine instead of, forcing to give up a supporter for turn with Lucamine, which is very bad. He takes another Lucamine, of course, and a Team Rocket's handiwork, recognizing that Xander does not have a lot of cards left and that handiwork can start to be a proactive way that Butch can win this game.
And, Xander does play 2 copies of N. I believe he played 1 early on in the game. So if he has 1 more left, he will be able to... Oh, wow. Looks like there's only like 6 cards left in Xander's deck. So he's going to want to find his last N at some point to try to prevent that from happening. You actually see Scramble Switch, the A-Spec card. That could be a way for Xander to reset this damage and get a Knuckle Impact KO here.
Yeah, and he is going to Scramble Switch, not use its effect, just get a free switch here, and this is actually huge. He will go down to 2 prizes, and now he's got to find a way to get the last 2, but this is a huge knockout for Xander.
Yeah, definitely. And this might be where Butch tries to go super offensive with Team Rocket's handiwork. Maybe he sees his opponent is getting down to a low deck size. Maybe I need to just be more aggressive with handiwork as opposed to my energy disruption cards. Xander's just kind of considering everything here. Looks like he will go ahead and take that Knuckle Impact KO. Takes a couple of energy out of his prize cards, actually, which is super relevant.
Yeah, definitely. Something to think of. It looks like Butch's Wailord had 170 damage last turn. So if Xander still had access to that Beast energy that was ripped from his hand a few turns ago, he could have actually used Jet Punch to knock out this Wailord, but instead Butch has forced him to use Knuckle Impact twice.
Yeah, that Team Skull Grunt definitely paying off here. We just see the Team Flare Grunt come out and a pass from Butch. Over to Xander's side, he does have a strong energy in his hand. Could start attacking using that, but that would open up an opportunity for Butch to go Enhanced Hammer plus Team Flare Grunt and leave this Buzzwole with less than 3 energies.
Yeah, Xander is considering an Ultra Ball. He actually plays down a Rock Ruff instead. So he, I wonder what he's thinking here with this Rock Ruff.
Maybe he just wants to have access to Bloodthirsty Eyes later on, maybe to bring up a Wailord or something like that, that he's jet punched some damage onto, but he would have to replace the stadium to do that, since Rough Seas will heal every turn, and like you said, all 3 of those Brooklet Hills are already gone.
Yeah, definitely. He plays a Remoraid as well, so his Colress will draw 5 instead of 4 or 3. Maybe he thinks the game is getting into the late game, and Octillery can draw me those last crucial cards I need, even after I end low. So, interesting play, but that is cards that he is burning, and he doesn't really have a whole lot of cards to spare here to make plays like this.
You want to use Colress to effect in this matchup of, it's kind of like your extra in of like putting cards back into your deck so that you don't deck out. But at the same time, he does still want to remain aggressive, remain applying pressure to Butch every single turn. So it needs to do that with by drawing more cards. So I think that's what led to his decision here to bench the Remoraid. We actually saw him choose not to attach the strong energy at all. What do you think of that call?
I like that he's not attacking this turn. So, like you said, that would give Butch the opportunity to Enhanced Hammer and Flare Grunt. And, of course, Xander can't afford to lose 2 energy in a turn. So I think he's smartly going to just wait until he can do it the next turn. Hope Butch doesn't have that Team Flare Grunt that he has. Never mind. But again, Xander can, hopefully Butch doesn't have another Team Flare Grunt in his hand right now.
Yeah, and this is actually a good position for Butch. This could be the turn where Xander is only able to find a strong energy, and if that is the case, Butch could get off that turn of Enhanced Hammer plus Flare Gun and put Xander at just 1 energy on this Buzzwole GX, which is what Xander really has been trying to avoid this whole game.
Yeah, definitely. Xander, looking through the discard, I see 2 Team Flare Gun for sure. Of course, there's 3 in there, I think. Of course, Butch has access to technically an infinite number of Team Flare Grunts, but right now he's used 3, which means the likelihood of him having the 4th one is pretty low, and I think Xander's counting on that. He uses a Jet Punch here. He'll do 70 to the active and 30 to the bench, which of course is negated by Rough Seas.
Something kind of interesting that we could see pop up is Butch's actual 1-prize Pokemon that he's playing, and that is the Ultra Prism Oranguru. There could be a situation where Butch AZs an active Wailord, sends up the Oranguru, and with that lightning energy he plays, uses Resource Management to get back something like those Max Potions, to get back VS Seekers to have access to his supporters later on, so that way... and he doesn't mind benching that 1-prize Pokemon, right? Because Xander is at 2 prizes. It's the only 1-prize Pokemon Xander could knock out. So Xander, it kind of forces Xander to take 1 additional knockout.
Yeah, definitely. That Plumeria, of course, what Xander didn't want to see. Butch actually drew that card. Xander, he's counting cards. He's eyeing that Lele. I'm not sure what supporters are in his deck that would be useful here. Guzma. But taking that Guzma takes a card out of the deck, and I'm not sure it's particularly useful right now. Maybe he's going to Guzma the Buzzwole to the bench so that he can start attaching his few remaining energy to it again and save it from that handiwork.
Maybe that's what he's thinking.
Flare Gun.
Maybe that's what he's thinking here, but also at the same time, maybe he's going to try to Guzma this Wailord, and he could use Jet Punch here with a strong energy and get a decent chunk of damage on both whales in play, something that's not happened this game. He hasn't been able to keep damage on multiple Wailords at one time. This could allow him to do that since there's already 60 on that active whale. Actually could potentially hit this energy here on the Max Elixir. We see him hit it right away, and could hit this Wailord for a Knuckle Impact.
Yeah, he was just checking to see what other cards are there, maybe see if there's one more energy. So he will refill this Buzzwole. I think if I'm Xander, does he have another Guzma in his deck or hand?
He plays 3 copies. Actually, no, he does play the full 4 copies of it, so I'm not sure how many he's played to this point, how many he's had to discard with Professor Sycamore. So we'll see what other ones he has access to. And he does have a strong energy in his hand. We'll see if he chooses to attach it or not here. And what he chooses to attack with, is it going to be Knuckle Impact or is it going to be...
and he Dangerous Rogues he Bloodthirsty Eyes the Whaler to the active spot, and he has the strong...
That's it?
Knuckle Impact the Whaler.
Xander Pero wins game number 1 here. Wow, Bloodthirsty Eyes bringing that whale that had 60 damage back up to the active spot, and Xander Pero takes down game number 1 against Wailord. What a swing here from Xander.
Absolutely incredible. I cannot imagine Butch was expecting that. We talked about Xander as one of the smartest players in the game right now, and he knew exactly how to take all of his 6 prizes with every card in his deck. Incredible win.
And this is a tough spot for Butch. The only way he wins this finals match at this point is if he decks out Xander twice in a row. And we do not, I think, have enough time for 2 full games of Waylord. I think that just winning that first game is almost the nail in the coffin for Butch. I think we might have a new regional champion.
This is absolutely incredible. That match took almost half of the 75 minutes here. I don't know exactly how much, but pretty close to that. And so, if one game took half that time, it stands to reason that both games will. And like you said, if anything, we'll go to sudden death, and Xander can just find a way to Absorption GX and win this one. Of course, we still have another game to go for sure with Butch. Mm-hmm. So he's going to maybe, he saw that playing that slow, Xander was able to win even playing that slow. Do you think he maybe goes for a more aggressive approach with handiworks this game?
That's what he has to do, honestly, at this point. I mean, and sudden death is actually not even going to be an option at this point. The only way sudden death would occur would be if Butch had taken 50% of his prize cards in this game and we went to time in game 2, and that's not an option since, he doesn't play energy to attack with high breaching.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, high breaching takes 5 energy, something that you can't really get on the board with max potions and AZs and stuff. But, wow, what an incredible win by Xander. Very calm. He just, he calculated it out almost right away, I'm sure, and slowly but surely clawed his way to that victory.
And that play came out of nowhere. It took me a little bit by surprise, I'm not going to lie. So it was very cool to see. And I'm sure Xander has talked to a bunch of people about this matchup, about this game, about ways to win. And I'm sure maybe that Guzma plus Bloodthirsty Eyes play came up at some point in his discussions with his friends. And, Xander probably saw that play coming multiple turns ahead of time.
Yeah, of course, Xander, he's been here before. He's won 2 of these regionals before, so he knows that, he won game 1, but he's still got another win to go before he's crowned the champion. So he's not going to let this one get to his head.
Absolutely.
And we are going to game 2.
We'll see what the starters are for each of these players. Butch is going to have to be extremely aggressive, drawing cards with things like Tropical Beach and using cards like Team Rocket's Handiwork in order to discard cards. It looks like he's playing a Nest Ball right away and probably going to get a Waylord EX in play.
He immediately starts jotting some notes down.
So we'll have to see. I can't quite tell what that active Pokemon is. It kind of looks like Xurkitree, not going to lie. So that would be unfortunate. It is Xurkitree. Xander could actually just get a knockout on this very, very quickly, turn 1. If he gets Choice Band plus a Fighting Energy, maybe a Diancie, would Jet Punch be enough to get the knockout?
I think if he gets a Strong Energy, a Choice Band, and the Diancie, he will be able to use Jet Punch and knock out this Xurkitree. That's huge for Xander.
Well, the thing is he would need to use a basic Fighting Energy, so I don't think he'd quite be able to get there. Of course, Xurkitree's Flashing Head ability prevents all effects done to it by, prevents all damage. No, Butch is just not going to take that option off the field. He's like, I'm not going to let you get that damage on this Xurkitree. AZ's going to pick it right up right away.
Yeah. The only upside to that play is, of course, it uses 1 AZ from Butch, but he does have 4 of them. So Xander doesn't really care what happened here. He just assumes that he won't get a prize this soon anyway.
So we're going to see what Xander wants to do on his turn. Looks like he's eyeing up an Ultra Ball here. What Pokemon do you think he wants to get in play with this?
I don't have any idea. I would imagine maybe a Diancie. Last game he had Sudowoodo, Diancie, and Buzzwole, and he only had the Sudowoodo because he started it. Mm-hmm. So if this game he can just get the Diancie, I think he's fine with just Diancie, Buzzwole. We saw how he manipulated his board with Scramble Switch and Guzmas, so I think that's what he wants to do here.
And we know Butch doesn't play any cards like Xerosic or Field Blower that can discard Pokemon Tool cards. So once a Diancie Prism Star comes into play, with a Floatstone on it, it will, be able to have that mobility with the Floatstone and have that free retreat.
Yeah, Xander is looking through his deck. I don't think there is a Diancie in there because it looks like he's eyeing this Rockruff, and that 20 damage is going to be so significant. He used it. He needed that to win last game. That's a big loss if it is prized.
So we'll see here with Ultra Ball what he does finally decide to take. We could see that Bloodthirsty Eyes come into play at some point in the game, so might as well maybe go ahead and just get that Rockruff down because he wants to have that option available to him.
Yeah, definitely. Thinking about the strategy this game for Xander, I'm not really... Oh, he does have the Diancie.
And that's definitely good. Definitely happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about strategy for Xander, I'm not really sure what exactly he did last game to actually take his 6 prizes, but whatever he did, let's just hope he does that again.
Yeah.
If he wants to take down these whales.
Yeah, we saw his strategy be, kind of interesting. He went
I think he led with Absorption.
Yeah, Absorption GX, then he pulled off the Knuckle Impact into Scramble Switch into Knuckle Impact play. Then he went for a Jet Punch, setting up the damage that he needed in order to use Guzma plus Bloodthirsty Eyes. So maybe Butch will just keep one Wailord EX in play. That could take away that option of that last knockout that Xander was able to take. So we'll see if that's maybe what Butch decides to do this time.
Absolutely. Butch has the ability to do that because he does have Robo Sub, which he can keep on the bench. So even if Xander does, Absorption GX the lone Wailord, then Butch can just drop another Wailord and be safe from, a one-hit KO. So that's a good idea. We'll see if he does that. Xander's going to Chorus here for just 2 cards. Normally you don't want to do that, but he will most likely use Butch's Tropical Beach to bail himself out.
Yeah, we saw Isaac do the same thing in the top 4 match. Doesn't mind going down to a low hand size with a Chorus or an N because he knows that I'm going to be able to potentially use Tropical Beach.
Alternatively, the 2 cards he drew were Octillery and Brooklet Hill. So maybe he could have grabbed Remory, but he does just opt to Tropical Beach here. Got a couple energy. I think I see 2 fighting in there and a strong. So like last game, I'm going to assume he's going to lead with the strong energy. Maybe start powering up the Buzzwole with basic energies on the bench. And we do see a Team Rocket's handiwork right away.
Oh, I think that was double heads. You can see Xander
2,
not super happy about that
3.
one.
Fortunately, no energy were discarded. I think, Xander doesn't care what gets discarded so long as it isn't energy cards.
This is interesting here from Butch. We might just see him use Lightning GX potentially on the coming turns. Interesting play of him to bench that Circuitry, actually.
Yeah, maybe he's... So now Xander wants to... obviously, the allure of these 2 prizes is pretty great, but Xander understands that maybe it's not worth the significant investment. He can't knock it out in one hit, and maybe he opts to not take the bait.
Yeah, so we'll see what he decides to do here. Lighting early on could definitely be pretty strong. We'll see what Butch decides to do and if he's able to use it. He'll probably only send that Circuitry to the active spot if he's going to use Lighting on that turn, and if he has a supporter card like Acerola or AZ in his hand to pick up that what is going to end up being a very damaged Circuitry GX.
Yeah, absolutely. Xander grabs another Buzzwole here. So this is fine. He can, instead of having to retreat this Buzzwole, he can just start powering up this other Buzzwole on the bench. Same basic effect. And this way, he'll actually have the optimal target for a Scramble Switch should he do that same kind of play this game.
So just going to get that Buzzwole GX down onto the bench. We'll see if he has any sort of energies to attach and try to avoid, putting them on the active. I don't think he's too worried about jet punching this Robo Substitute at this time.
No.
And something else worth noting, Rough Seas actually does heal both water and lightning type Pokemon, so if Xander was to try to set something up like a Jet Punch onto the Circuitry in order to try to take it out with another big Jet Punch in the next turn if it came to the active spot, Butch could just totally take away that 30 damage with a Rough Seas.
Xander attaches a basic fighting energy to the Buzzwole on the bench, and Butch will play Skyla here. What do you think he grabs with this Skyla? Maybe another Beach?
Yeah, I think another Beach would make sense. It looks like, I can't tell what that card is he brought to the front. It kind of looks like that Ultra Prism Arangaroo. Maybe he could get a Nest Ball to get that in play if he wants to do that. Not sure that resource management is going to be too important, especially this early on.
Yeah, definitely. He takes up Plumeria, so he's going to start hitting those energy from afar on the next turn. But Xander is probably aware that this was going to come down sooner or later, so it's important that he starts getting energy down now.
It's kind of funny. Xander at Dallas Regionals earlier this year, he finished in the top 32 of that tournament. He played a Zoroark Counters deck and also played a Bunnelby from Primal Clash in that deck. I bet he's wishing he had that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in Dallas, there was actually surprisingly some whisperings of Wailord, so much so that some players like Xander did actually respect it with the Bunnelby inclusion. Of course, I don't think anybody expected Wailord to come back here, and here it is in the finals. Xander's going to Brooklet Hill again, maybe just checking the deck. I don't know if he wants to grab anything.
Yeah, maybe just kind of like trying to look through his deck. This does, provide one search plus a shuffle, so we'll see how he utilizes that. Maybe he wants to get a Rockruff in play so he can use that Bloodthirsty Eyes at some point in the game. But we'll just have to see.
Checking again, checking his notes. Checking it twice.
Gonna find out
if Wailord can be knocked out.
And we'll just see how he proceeds with this turn. Looks like he decided not to get anything off of that Brooklet Hill.
And this is fine, taking the Brooklet Hill, there's no Pokemon that are useful to him, and that does take a card out of the deck. And obviously, not terribly relevant now, but it will matter later in the game. And we are under 30 minutes here, so we are now in regular Swiss territory, single game. Wailord is not a deck that you see at like city championships, for example, or league cups, because it takes so long to win a game. So, this is good.
Yeah, Wailord does not function very well in a best-of-1 tournament, really only has great effect in these best-of-3 tournaments. We see Xander just checking out the Xurkitree GX, just making sure he knows everything that card does. Actually, fun fact, I found out this weekend that Xurkitree's GX attack is not called Lightning GX. That's what I've always called it, is Lightning. It is just Lighting GX.
Lighting, interesting.
So I didn't believe the person that told me. I actually had to look the card up on my phone. They are, in fact, right. It is just Lighting GX. So.
It's easy to make a mistake. It takes one lightning. So it seems like maybe Pokemon could have been a little on the nose there, but of course they aren't.
I wonder how many people in our Twitch chat are searching up what Xurkitree GX does right now and just checking out if that spelling is actually correct.
Speaking from personal experience, I had to read the card entirely because I had never seen it before the first time I played it. So, I probably would have believed you if you had told me it was lightning as well. Looks like Butch uses Brooklet here for another Wailord. One Wailord, 3 Wailords. Doesn't really matter. Xander's not going to be knocking any out this turn. Butch does VS Seeker. Maybe he takes the Plumeria just to keep the energy count low, and he does do that.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to discard another Wailord. Doesn't need more than 3 in play, and if he ever does, he can probably use Puzzle of Time or something to get those back. And also discards Enhanced Hammer, kind of saying, hey, I know Xander was very smart about putting those special energies in play. I can discard Enhanced Hammer, maybe having access to it later when special energies do hit the field.
Yeah, definitely. That Wailord in the discard is a small victory for Xander. That's one Wailord that he has gotten rid of here. Even unintentionally. And Butch will double puzzle for Tropical Beach. What else do you think you grabs? Maybe a VS Seeker?
Looks like that is what he's choosing. And for anyone who was a non-believer in what I was saying about Xurkitree GX, there it is up on the screen right now. Lighting GX confirmed. No lightning here today. And Butch is just going to go ahead and use Tropical Beach, draw a handful of cards.
Something I also didn't believe. I didn't think that was a Pokemon the first time I saw it as well. That thing's like a weird alien. I don't really know, man, but Ultra Beasts are wild.
Yeah, all of the Ultra Beasts look very, very different from what the standard Pokemon looks like, and Xurkitree is no exception. We got a spiky ball on top of a bunch of wires, basically.
Yeah, it looks like kind of like a piece of steel wool or something. I don't really know. Maybe Buzzwole could, pick it up and lift it like a weight or something.
Have we devolved to the point in this game where we're just talking about the looks of the Ultra Beast Pokemon? Is that what we've resolved to here in this Wailord match in the finals?
Gotta find something to do while Butch is passing, so we'll try and do things for him instead. Looks like he's gonna handiwork again. Again, trying to be more aggressive, like we talked about. There's one heads. Can he get double heads?
Double heads twice in a row. There's a strong energy. Choice Band as well.
Oh my God.
That could be another important card.
Honestly, 3 of the 4 cards discarded were useful. Energy, of course, the most important. Guzma for those switching turns he used so effectively last game. And then the Brooklet Hill is actually important to kind of stop a Tropical Beach. I think that's 2 Brooklet down. This is... this game still has a long way to go, but Xander has already lost some crucial resources without even using them himself.
And all of a sudden, we're up to 3 energy on that Buzzwole GX. We could see an absorption come out. There is enough damage in play thanks to that Diancie Prism Stars Princess's Cheers. A Guzma plus a absorption would do enough to knock out a Wailord on the bench, and Xander's got a Guzma in his hand. Looks like he's going to go ahead and go on the offensive here using the absorption. Will do 260 damage here, taking that knockout.
Yeah, and this is good, actually. If Xander can find a third Guzma maybe and a Floatstone or something, then he can Guzma, retreat, and use Knuckle Impact on that Xurkitree and go down to 2 prizes much faster, which will conserve a lot more resources.
So it looks like he's bringing AZ right to the front, maybe wanting to pick up, I'm not really sure. He could pick up the Robo-Sub, actually, so he could get more use out of it.
And he does just pick up the Xurkitree, discarding the Lightning.
Okay.
So the ability to use Lighting GX is now gone. Of course, AZ only picks up the Pokemon. It does not pick up anything else attached to that Pokemon.
You know, and that's really smart from Butch, right? He doesn't want to just let Xander be able to get a Floatstone plus Guzma play and just bring up that Xurkitree GX and take those 2 free prizes. So using AZ takes away that option. You know, I'm kind of surprised Butch even put the Xurkitree in play a turn before he was planning on using it. But, you know, he had to use his supporter for turn, and that's a turn that he wasn't able to use a Plumeria or a Team Flare Gun.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I think maybe he was kind of trying to bait Xander into knocking it out, you know, sparing a Wailord for a turn and killing something that doesn't really matter. But Xander doesn't take the bait. He knows killing the Wailords is what's difficult, and he can kill Xurkitree at any time.
Team Skullgrunt
Gets
here.
another energy out of the hand. So that's 2 energy that Xander just has not gotten to use this game. I think that's 2 strong and 2 fighting in the discard.
Yeah, but there are still 4 basic fighting on this Buzzwole GX. Xander is definitely fine with that position. He can use Knuckle Impact this turn and try to employ that strategy that we saw him use in the last game of maybe getting a Guzma play. So maybe we'll see if that's the case. Butch use something like an AZ on the benched Wailord even to just take away that option completely.
Yeah. Xander looking like he's going to Jet Shoot again maybe. Or he's
No.
thinking about Knuckle Impact, and he does Knuckle Impact. So maybe he has the Scramble Switch play in his hand again. But it does not matter. Butch just clears away all that damage, of course. That Scramble Switch play from Xander only came after Butch had exhausted All Form Rax Potion and a couple puzzles as well. So Butch is definitely ready for that one. And he starts with the Lusamine, and that means he can begin the Lusamine chain at any points he want in this game.
Yeah, I wonder what he'll get back here. Looks like Team Rocket's Handiwork is going to be one choice. Maybe even just getting 2 of those back. No, actually just going to get a Tropical Beach. Wants to draw some more cards this turn, it looks like. And, you know, get more resources in his hand to use in the future.
He's got quite a few cards in his hand, so I'm not sure how many cards Beach will draw here.
I think he actually just chose to pass, just is holding onto it for now. I think Xander did draw his card, and now we see Xander checking the discard pile, just checking through how many of these resources has Butch used.
Yeah, we are coming up on 20 minutes here, so still a ways to go, but you know Xander still's got plenty of time to win this game, and Butch has to hope that he can deck him out in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but Butch would need to deck him out a second time in these 20 minutes, and it's just not looking super good for Butch.
Yeah, you know if it is, you know, if Butch wins game 2 before time is called, then it will go to sudden death anyway, and that is something that Butch cannot win. So he has to hope he can deck Xander out in sudden death as well, which is quite the tall order.
I don't think it would. There's not a scenario here where we would actually end up going to sudden death. As Butch does flip another heads there on the Rocket's Handiwork. If Butch was to win game number 2, we would just play out game 3 normally. They'd set up with 6 prizes apiece, and you know all Xander has to do to win in game 3 is take a prize card, and Butch would never win. So
sure, makes sense.
Yeah, if time is called in game 3, you know if players are, you do the +3 turns. If there's no one ahead on prizes, you play until the first prize is taken, and the player who has the most prizes wins the game.
Yeah, and it's facts like that. That's the reason why I'm here casting and not at the table with Xander and Butch. But looks like Xander plays the Elixir. You know, it looks like he's trying to be a little more aggressive himself here, get a lot of energy in play. You know, so even if Butch starts hating the energy on the active, he can only do 1 a turn. Xander will have a Buzzwole on the bench with energy as well. So this is interesting from Xander. He's got a lot of cards left, but I wonder if being this aggressive is necessary.
You know, and it's interesting. What do you think about his decision to spread energy out? I kind of was mostly expecting him to just keep energy on 1 Pokemon. Ooh, we actually see a Rangaroo come to the active spot. If he has Puzzle of Time, he can get back that energy and, you know, use the resource management. But anyway, sorry, what do you think about that decision to spread these energies around?
You know, it's interesting. I guess it gives him options with a Guzma. He can switch into something else and continue attacking. And that way, you know, he could Guzma something and hit it for, you know, 70 damage with that Jet Shoot, and then maybe play a Scramble Switch to switch into the other Buzzwole. And I'm not really sure. Putting this Oranguru active is actually interesting. So he doesn't have the energy to use it. And if Xander knocks this out, then Butch cannot Puzzle of Time to get it back to get resources again. So, you know, he's conceding that 7th prize, of course, but, you know, maybe he could have used additional resources later in this game. And Xander attaches a Float Stone, conserves 4 basic fighting energy in play, retreats, and he will knock out this Oranguru with a Jet Punch.
Yeah, definitely looking solid for Xander. Like taking the prize, maybe, Xander looking through his prizes is a very smart player, knows what kind of cards he has prized at any given time. So maybe there's something in there he knows he wants to get access to. Maybe he has energy prized, maybe something like Super Rod. But yeah, we're just going to see Jet Punch take that KO. Does place 30 damage on a Wailord. Doesn't really matter which one because Butch, of course, is just going to use Rough Seas.
Yeah, so I think Xander actually took that beast energy out of his prizes. That is actually pretty significant because that's 30 additional damage, so he can use that to maybe, in one big push, reach to that 250 damage with a Knuckle Impact. Butch.
So actually, here's like a pretty interesting scenario here. If Butch was to use like an AZ on his Wailord after it was damaged or something like that, he would have no benched Pokemon. Xander wouldn't be able to use Guzma, and there's a choice band on this active Buzzwole GX. It might be stuck with only being able to use one energy at a time per turn, and Butch could get into a lock this game where he wins game number 2.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if Xander realizes that. He must have another switching effect. Probably.
We know he has the scramble switch, right?
Oh, he does, yes. Okay, so forget we said anything.
He will have that option, but that would only net him like one switch effect, right? So
Right.
if this Buzzwole ever came to the active, actually interesting enough, we noted this in top 4. Butch doesn't play any sort of gust effect, no counter catchers in his list, no Lysander or Guzma. Sort of an interesting call. Sometimes Wailord can win games by bringing something to the active and just running their opponent out of cards and out of energy.
Xander will use a Guzma. I think that's his third one in the discard because one was discarded off of Team Rocket's handiwork earlier. So he is going to opt to, maybe he Knuckle Impacts here because he does have the Float Stone to retreat, and he could hit him with a big Jet Shoot. He does have the Beast Energy, so he could use Jet Shoot for, I think that's 90 damage, which of course...
150 on that Wailord right now. It would be 100 damage coming
100
out.
damage, actually, you're right. So that would be enough to two-shot it if Butch doesn't heal, but I imagine he's playing a computer search, probably going to grab a healing card here. I would guess maybe a Max Potion, so he can use a supporter like Plumeria or Team Flaregun if he has one to continue hating off this energy.
So yeah, we'll almost certainly see all of this damage be erased.
So he plays Tropical Beach, so that looks like a Max Potion. I imagine he took that. He had the Tropical Beach from a Lusamine a couple turns ago, and he just beaches, doesn't play a Disruption supporter card.
And it's interesting, we see that Tropical Beach coming into play. As you mentioned, Butch Lusamine for that a while ago now at this point, so kind of seeing the future of this game, Butch being very smart about what cards he needs to have into his hand and what cards he knows he's going to need access to at some point in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Xander has another basic fighting energy. Thinking about attaching it to that Buzzwole on the bench and retreating. Again, 4 energy on this Buzzwole, still very important. Xander is starting to be aware of how many cards in his deck. I imagine there's probably, about 15 cards left or something like that.
Something along those lines.
But, this is, the most important thing, actually, I think for both players here, the amount of, stamina and endurance Butch has. He's had to do this for 2 days straight.
Props to Butch, honestly. Like, that is a lot to deal with. I can't imagine playing Wailord for 17 rounds at this point. That is nuts.
Yeah, actually I spoke to Kyle Sukovich once a long time ago. A deck that he played, Dialga Chomp, had a similar kind of strategy, just grinded your opponents down. And so he counted on just being able to outlast opponents mentally over the course of a long tournament and hope they made a mistake. And it seems like Wailord is kind of a spiritual successor to that. And Butch probably had to do the same thing over the course of the weekend, and I'm getting exhausted watching Butch play this, so I imagine he's probably pretty tired himself.
I'm sure he's definitely had opponents make many mistakes against him through this tournament. As you mentioned earlier, Wailord is a deck that when you're playing against it, every single decision has to be extremely calculated. You have to always make the right call, and anytime you give Wailord an opening, they can definitely capitalize, and I'm sure Butch has had that scenario come up where he's been able to capitalize on a bad start from an opponent.
Yeah, definitely. Plays AZ. That's important for Xander. That's not a supporter that'll discard energy. So he does, keep these 4 energy on for another turn.
So we're going to see just a pass from Butch. Has too many cards in his hand to use Tropical Beach.
Xander is thinking about maybe an Ultra Ball here, discarding 3 cards from his hand. I'm not sure what he wants to grab. Maybe a Lele if it's in there. I think maybe he has a 4th Guzma, but not really sure if he wants to do that right now.
Yeah, probably wants to save that for a little later on. Maybe could get down like Remoraid to just like thin the card out of your deck. But yeah, like usually you just want to keep cards in your deck, right? So we actually just see Xander pass, it looks like.
Yeah, I like this from Xander. He doesn't need to do anything this turn. The amount of cards in his deck is more important.
I believe that was 12 cards in Xander's deck, if I counted correctly, 12 or 13. So we might just see Butch start using that onslaught of Team Rocket's handiworks to try to mill out the rest of Xander's deck.
And he is doing that. So he can do that, every other turn and still refresh his hand with Tropical Beach. Xander can't stop it. One heads,
Two heads. Wow, I think Butch is something like 7 for 8 on heads in this second game alone. That is pretty crazy.
Yeah, so what's interesting here, actually, that got an N, and earlier, another Team Rocket's handiwork got an N, and that is both of Xander's Ns. Xander, of course, does not play any VS Seeker, so he will not have any way to shuffle his hand back into his deck unless he still has one more Colress.
I think he did play it earlier on in this game, didn't he? Where he used Colress for 2 on like the first or second turn, I think.
I think so, and I don't see it in there. So this means that all the cards in Xander's hand and deck, he can't refresh his deck at all. I think he's used Super Rod, or it's Prize, because we have not seen it this game, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he's used it, so if it's not in his deck, it must be prized. Oh, no, I think I did see it right there near the top of his deck. So if I'm Butch, I'm going to try to recognize the fact that Xander is out of these shuffle draw supporters and try to capitalize by going aggressive with Team Rocket's handiwork in the coming turns.
Definitely. We're down to 11 and a half minutes left, so still a little bit of time left for this game for Xander, and Butch, of course, is hoping that he can win before time expires.
So we're going to see what Xander tries to do here.
Of course, the failing of Wailord historically has been that if you do lose the first game in Top Cut, it is, it's almost a death sentence. And Butch is hoping to avoid that somehow. Plays an AZ, picks up that damaged Wailord, puts up a Robosub. This will buy him another turn. And he does Tropical Beach.
Yep. Xander draws his card for turn.
I think that's Super Rod that he just drew. So that's good that it's safe in his hand at least, safe from a future handiwork.
He does still have that beast energy in his hand, can throw that down maybe for a surprise extra amount of damage later on. Not sure where the math could necessarily be that relevant. Maybe Knuckle Impact with a strong into a Jet Punch with a beast energy, just kind of, shooting stuff out there. Haven't done the math, but seems like some combination of things like that could come out with a knockout for Xander.
Yeah. Butch playing a VS Seeker. Looks like he's going to grab that handiwork again. Xander is starting to run desperately low on cards, and Butch is going to try and speed up that clock. Gets one heads. There's a scramble switch and an energy.
That is
two huge cards.
That is a big swing for Butch. Really good 2 cards for him to be able to discard, and it looks like Butch is in a position where he could win this game number 2. 9 minutes remaining. There is a good chance this game 2 could actually finish.
Yeah, definitely. Xander plays a Super Rod, probably prematurely. He would have liked to keep that energy in the deck, but probably just going to shuffle in 3 energy. That's the only thing he needs right now. He's had that Rockruff in play for a while to follow up, that spectacular turn he had last game, but it looks like the ability to do that is starting to slip away from Xander. He probably thought he'd be in a little bit of a better position here, a little more commanding board state, but Butch has managed to stay on top of him most of this game.
And something kind of interesting about using Super Rod when you have this few cards in your deck is there's a pretty high chance that you're going to get energy discarded off of something like a Team Rocket's handiwork. So if Butch flips another couple heads, we could see multiple energies hitting the discard. I think there's less than 10 cards in Xander's deck.
Definitely. So Xander, I think he used Knuckle Impact last turn. I don't think he can even attack this turn.
I think it may have been the previous turn. I think he may be live to use Knuckle Impact this turn.
Okay.
So we'll find out shortly. These turns kind of go by quickly on Butch's side. He just kind of does 1 or 2 things and beaches, or does 1 or 2 things and passes. So
Xander playing that Lycanroc, bringing up a Wailord. He is getting ready, and he will attach a 5th energy to this Buzzwole. And I think he's going to go for another Knuckle Impact. This one will do 200 damage to the Wailord.
And this is setting up for a play next turn where if Butch does not have a way to heal this Wailord, Xander could take a knockout with that benched Buzzwole GX with a Jet Punch. Xander actually just choosing to knock out the Robosub. No reason to really put the 30 on the Wailord because Butch could very easily just find Rough Season. Wow, Butch just has that max potion to heal right away.
Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. on that damage, and he plays an Enhanced Hammer. Of course, if he can VS Seeker for Team Flare Grunt or a Plumeria, this is one of those dreaded double energy discard turns that Xander has been fortunate enough to avoid for this entire series so far. But we'll see if Butch has any resources. I think he's played, a handful of VS Seekers this game, so I'm not sure what he has, but looks like he's playing Gladian, or what he prized.
It looks like there's an AZ right there. That could be a good card to grab. It looks like something else might be a little more important, though.
I didn't see what he did take, but Gladian, of course, replaces the card in the prizes that you take. So it's a very interesting effect. We've seen a couple prize, manipulation cards like that, but Gladian is the first one that is a supporter.
All right, so 6 prizes left for Butch, of course, still, and we're just going to see him beach for 1 card. Over to Xander's side. What does he want to do this turn? He did Knuckle Impact last turn. Cannot attack with this active Buzzwole.
Yeah, and there is less than 7 minutes left in this game. So, if Xander's lucky and Butch, goes for Handiwork but flips Tails and the cards in Xander's deck are protected, maybe he can survive to the end of the clock here. He's still got to take out 2 Wailords, and it seems like every time he gets close, sets up a play, Butch has the Max Potion or AZ to clear it. So we'll see what he does this turn.
And looking back at that game 1, honestly, I think that's a lot of what that game 1 came down to. Butch had to use a lot of those max potions early on in the game. Wasn't able to use those healing supporter cards. And I think because of that, was unable to find them later on in the game when he needed to. And I think that might be what ended up costing him that first game.
And he's going to Jet Punch again, constantly setting up these knockouts. Forcing Butch to have to get rid of both of them. I think Butch still has his second Rough Seas if it isn't prized, so he could drop that at any point.
Did Xander not Knuckle Impact the previous turn? There's still that Enhanced Hammer at the top of Butch's deck. I think that...
No, Xander attached to Strong Energy, and I believe he used Jet Punch.
The previous turn?
I think so, yeah, because he shot it onto the Robo Sub.
That's right, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good looking out. Just wanted to make sure that nothing happened there. Looks like about 6 or 7 cards in Xander's deck. If Butch has VS Seeker or Puzzle of Times, we might see him go aggressive here with those Team Rocket's Handiworks. There's 2 Puzzle of Time. If I'm Butch, I'm probably going to just grab a Handiwork and a VS Seeker. It looks like just double VS Seeker, which can definitely be that 2 combination.
And now this is probably going to be a Handiwork. He sees Xander. I think Xander only has like 6 or 7 cards left. So if he can get some heads here, very important. We haven't seen Lucamine for a while. Maybe that was the card that he took off of Gladion. We don't see where that flip went.
Looks like it was a double tails.
That is exactly what Xander needs to see. So now this Wailord has 50 damage on it, and Xander does have that Beast Energy in his hand. So he could Knuckle Impact and knock out another Wailord, bringing himself down to 1 prize here. Checking the discard, of course Butch has used a ton of resources, but Wailord has a way to have almost infinite resources here with that Lucamine.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be huge if Xander does decide to take this KO. Looks like he will attach that Beast Energy Prism Star and will be able to Knuckle Impact here for enough to knock out this Wailord EX in the active, going down to just 1 prize card remaining, but he has a 250 HP wall over there on Butch's bench that he's going to have to go through in order to take his last 2 prizes, or his last 1 single prize.
Yeah, and so this is the last Wailord, because Butch did discard that 1 Wailord, I think, with maybe a Plumeria or something at the beginning of the game. So all he has left is Robo Sub. I think he's got 1 Robo Sub. Otherwise, he'll have to puzzle for additional Pokemon to put down.
So Butch here, I think, did draw a Team Flare Gun for the turn. If he has an Enhanced Hammer as well, could remove multiple energy cards. Looks like via Seeker, he may just go for a Team Rocket's Handiwork. I think he knows that he's relatively safe. This active Buzzwole can't get knocked out unless there's like a Scramble Switch play, and I think we know the Scramble Switch has already been discarded. There's 1 heads. Let's see if he can get another one. There's 2 heads. How many cards are left in Xander's deck? Looks like there may just be 1 card left. 2 energy cards discarded. I think there is literally only 1 card left in Xander's deck. So what he draws this turn will be his last card.
And we did see the Scramble Switch is gone as well, and a Max Potion to heal it.
Just in case.
Because. So Xander has 1 fighting left in his deck, and he draws, and I don't think there's a way to put cards back in the deck.
Yeah, I think this is going to be game right here. Butch Smith will win game number 2, and we're going to have to set up for a game number 3. It looks like Xander kind of just looking at the cards in his hand. There is, I think, like a blue-looking supporter. Does he still have that Colress? I thought he had played it.
I think the Colress is in his hand. He's checking the discard.
Oh, he actually plays 2 Colress. I thought he had only played 1. It turns out it was actually Isaac, who it was in top 4, I think, only played 1 copy of Colress. Xander plays 2, so he can use Colress here to shuffle cards back into his deck and will avoid the deck out here in this specific scenario.
So if I'm Xander, I don't know what else I want to play. I think I just play that chorus. Butch hates to see that. He thought he had him. Of course, Xander doesn't have too many cards, but he just bought himself a couple more turns here, and we're running out of time. There's 2 minutes 30 seconds left, and Xander will definitely be able to survive at least one handiwork. This is huge. We're coming down to the final stretch here.
Yeah, this is going to be a close one here in game number 2, and we'll have to see how it concludes. Only going to draw 3 cards here. Not too many left. See what Butch wants to do here on his next turn. I'm not sure what else Xander's going to be able to do. Can go for... I don't think he can even attack this turn. He did use Knuckle Impact last turn, so we'll most likely just have to pass, and we'll see what Butch decides to do.
Yeah. Butch, of course, he could hit him with another, Enhanced Hammer and Flare Gun or Plumeria strategy, but doesn't really... he wants to just get rid of the cards as fast as possible. Less than 2 minutes remaining. We are under 2 minutes.
We just see that pass from Xander. We just saw a count as well. There are 3 strong energy in his discard pile, 4 basic fighting energy, 4 basic fighting energy on the field, 1 beast energy in play. So that means he does only play 9 basic fighting, so there's only 1 energy left between his deck and prize.
Butch
is just going to concede! This is going to be the game. Xander Pero wins his second regionals.
Incredible.
Wow. Butch, I think, just recognizes that, even if I could win this game, Xander is going to win the match overall because of the way the time rules work. And wow, what a game! Congratulations to Butch on getting second with Waylord, but once again, Waylord cannot take the win in the finals.
Unbelievable game. Xander, he played it slow. He surprised us with that